Way back in the 80s, I was a teacher of religion in a Catholic high school for 4 years in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. About every now and then, the principal would bring in a speaker to talk to the kids on a variety of subjects. One time, here comes this sister in ragamuffin clothes, pushing a shopping cart into the auditorium. Turns out the sister wore these rags for a week or so in New York City, pushing the shopping cart around to enter into the world of the poorest of poor in New York, of what it would be like to sleep on the streets or eat in the missions and live the life of a very, very poor person, to lower herself into that world. How many of you would do that? I don't think I would, to be honest. But Jesus did. Jesus did. See, this is the feast of the Exaltation of the Cross, and one of our readings today helps us to understand it. From the second reading, Paul to the Philippians, written around 55 AD. It's one of the first books of the New Testament. Paul loved these people in Philippi, and it was obvious if you read it. I recommend it. It's a short read, 5 or 10 minutes. But part of that is our reading today, which was a hymn or a poem of the day that Paul inserted into his letter. Listen to this again. Christ Jesus, though he was in the form of God, did not deem equality with God as something to be grasped at. Jesus, the human on this earth, did not grasp at the majesty, the power, the awesomeness of God while he walked on this earth, even though he could have, but he didn't. He retained his humanity, but rather he took the form of a slave, says Paul in this hymn. Now, we know slavery is difficult, but in those days, the slave was at the very lowest level. Remember, Jesus was lowering himself from his divinity. He was with God from all time, but he lowered himself again and again to enter into the depth of who we as humans are. This is not a power of domination, but of a willingness to be a slave. Name another religion in the entire world where God is marked by becoming a humble servant. You can't. There is no other religion in the world that has a God who took this route. Again, he became obedient to death on a cross. How far down this ladder is Jesus going to go? Now, if we hear the word cross all the time, but for the ancients at the time of Jesus, when they think about the cross, they would get a cold chill in their spine because they knew how humiliating, how torturous, how excruciatingly painful the cross was. And this is where Jesus went, how far he lowered himself. Little pet peeve, if you don't mind, I'm taking a tangent here. Sometimes we grasp this idea of the cross, but sometimes we don't. And for example, in its worst case scenario, have you ever heard somebody say, "Oh, what a beautiful cross you're wearing"? No, it's not a beautiful cross. It's an ugly cross. And the only reason why you would wear it is out of respect and love for the one who made the greatest sacrifice for us. It will never, ever be a piece of jewelry or a beautiful thing. Okay, got that out of my system. Because of this, God highly exalted him. You know, in the Feast of the Exaltation of the Cross, it's sort of like we exalt Jesus, but it was God the Father who exalted Jesus, and because of this raised him up. From being at the lowest part of humanity, God raised him up. Now, what does all this mean for us? It's been a rough week for our country as we, for the 24th time, relive the horror of the 9/11 tragedy. And on top of that, many of us are reeling from the assassination of Charlie Kirk this past Wednesday. And sometimes you almost want to throw in the towel and say, it's over, it's terrible, we're not going to make it. No. You see, the exaltation of the cross tells us that we're going to lose a few battles, sometimes devastatingly, in our lives. But every single cross, every cross has a resurrection. And we will rise as the people of New York have rised, as our country will rise. Maybe not soon, but we will. Maybe it will be soon. But here's the truth. We can't lose. In the exaltation of the cross and the resurrection to follow, evil has been beaten, and we will win.